Good morning, gang. Today we're going to talk about the Game Awards. Now, everyone's been talking about the Game Awards recently, and there's a lot that's been going on with them. Between snubs for major releases this year, like Hogwarts, and them choosing the wrong coach for an esports team for Coach of the Year, there's been some controversy around it. My problem with the Game Awards this year is that I feel that the same 6 games have been nominated for basically every category. And I was wondering if the Game Awards have always been like that. Now, in 2013, between 2013 and 2014, the Game Awards changed. They changed from the VGAs to the Game Awards that we have now. So I figure the best way to test this is to look at the facts. We're going to look at all the nominees for the Game Awards this year in 2023, and then we're going to go and look at all the nominees for every category for 2014 and see if maybe the Game Awards have always picked just a handful of games to nominate for every category, or was there something different this year, right? Maybe they were just lazy. Even of the 6 games that are posted for Game of the Year, 3 of them, half of those games have come out in Q4 of this year, the last quarter of the year, and that just seems wrong. So we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of a dive into what is actually happening. So these are the nominees for the awards this year, right? For Game of the Year, we have Alan Wake, Baldur's Gate, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man, Resident Evil 4, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Of these 6 games, Alan Wake, Spider-Man, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder have come out in this quarter, right? They are recent releases. Resident Evil 4 is a remake. Tears of the Kingdom is nothing new from Breath of the Wild, and Baldur's Gate 3 is truly the only original game on this list. I have my own opinions on it, and I don't think it's a Game of the Year in any other year. I don't even think it's the best CRPG that Larian's put out. But that's just looking at Game of the Year. Best Game Direction, Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Okay, well, we can rationalize that, right? Game of the Year and Best Game Direction are kind of going to go hand in hand, right? If a game has great direction, it should be a Game of the Year, right? So those 2 categories being similar, makes some sense. And then we get to Best Narrative. Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3. Here we go, a new game. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, the DLC. Okay, but Final Fantasy 16, people love that game. And then Spider-Man 2. Well, at least for Final Fantasy 16, that's a new game for Best Narrative. But shouldn't a game that's nominated for Best Narrative, though, also be a Game of the Year? Right? If it has the best narrative in the entire game industry, maybe the gameplay's short. Maybe that's why it didn't get nominated for Game of the Year, because it has poor gameplay. Although people really like the gameplay of 16. It's got to be a limited category, right? Okay. Best Art Direction, Alan Wake 2. Hi-Fi Rush, that's a new game. We've gotten a new game. So in 4 categories, right? In these first 4 categories, we have gotten the same 6 games and 4 more. We have Lies of P in Best Art Direction, but we also have Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. My theory about the same 6 games being nominated for everything is starting to prove correct, and I'm not particularly happy about that. Best Score, Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Hi-Fi Rush, and Tears of the Kingdom. Let's be honest, if Hi-Fi Rush doesn't win this category, something is wrong. It is literally the only rhythm-based music game nominated in this category. Best audio design is Alan Wake 2 and Hi-Fi Rush and Spider-Man 2 and Resident Evil 4. But we have Dead Space remake that came out this year that people loved and thought was amazing and isn't also nominated for Game of the Year. Man, this is oof, it's not looking great this year, huh? Best performance, we got Idris Elba, a mainstream actor for Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, okay? Melanie LeBird for Alan Wake 2. Yuri Lowenthal for Spider-Man. But we got Cameron Monaghan for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which I don't think is nominated for anything else. Neil Newbern as Astorian for Baldur's Gate 3, and Ben Starr for Final Fantasy 16. Games for Impact, though. Okay, these are all new games. A Space for the Unbound, Chanters of Sonar, Goodbye Volcano High, Tsushia, Terra Nil, and Venba. I don't know anything about these games, but it is new games. It is unique games to this category, which is nice. That's what we expect. Best indie game: Cocoon, Dave the Diver, Dredge, Sea of Stars, Viewfinder. Games that are new to these categories and haven't been put into other categories, which is nice to see. Best debut indie game. We have Cocoon again, but you know that makes sense. Same thing with Viewfinder and Venba, and Dredge and Pizza Tower, right? Having a best debut game and best indie game, it kind of makes sense that there's overlap, though. If a game wins best indie game and doesn't, say Cocoon wins best indie game but loses best debut indie game, that's weird. Best ongoing game: Apex Legends, Cyberpunk 2077, which I guess is an ongoing game because they released DLC. A Final Fantasy 14 makes sense because it's a MOBA. A Fortnite, Genshin Impact, all pretty new games, questionably on Cyberpunk. And community support only has 2 MMOs on it. Baldur's Gate 3 and Cyberpunk are both largely single-player games. I mean, you could do multiplayer in Baldur's Gate, but the best experience for the story is probably single-player. And No Man's Sky has had great work done by it, but is that really community support, or is that just dev support? 14, Final Fantasy 14 and Destiny 2 are both MMOs, so they have great communities. Um, the other three are weird. Best mobile game: Final Fantasy 7, Honkai Star Rail, the Hello Kitty Island Adventure, Monster Hunter Now, and Terra Nil. Best VR AR games: Gran Turismo, Humanity, Horizon Call of the Mountain, Resident Evil Village, and Synapse. Again, all unique games, which is nice to see. Best action game: Armored Core 6, which got snubbed for Game of the Year also. Dead Island 2, which was a massive disappointment. Ghost Runner 2, people enjoyed. Hi-Fi Rush, which everybody loved. Remnant 2, which I haven't heard anything about. But unique games, I mean, Hi-Fi Rush was nominated for other categories, but you know, the other categories it was in kind of made sense for that game to be in. Best action adventure games: Alan Wake 2, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, and Jedi Survivor. Games we've seen before, but they are action adventure games. Although, if one of these wins here, say Tears of the Kingdom wins Best Action Adventure Game, but Alan Wake 2 wins Game of the Year, that seems problematic. Best Role Playing Game: Baldur's Gate 3, which was a given, Final Fantasy 16, Lies of P, Sea of Stars, Starfield. Best fighting game. God of Rock. Mortal Kombat 1. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. Pocket Bravery and Street Fighter 6. All fighting games, all new entries to a Game Awards category, this year at least. Best family game. Disney Illusion Island. Party Animals. Pikmin 4. Sonic Superstars, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Best sim strategy game, though. Advanced Wars 1 2 Reboot, City Skylines 2, Company of Heroes 3, Fire Emblem Engage, and Pikmin 4. City Skylines 2 came out this quarter also, incredibly recently, but it's a sim game, and all those games in that category haven't been mentioned in other ones, so that's a bonus. Sports racing games. Uh, EA Sports FC 24, F1 23, Forza Motorsports, Hot Wheels Unleashed 2, and The Crew. All new games, all nice to see. Best multiplayer game, Baldur's Gate 3. Diablo 4 is a multiplayer game. Party Animals, Street Fighter 6, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Well, that's okay. Two of those games are, multiplayer games in the sense that I think of a multiplayer game as, online multiplayer, fairly competitive,. Hmm. Okay. Innovation in accessibility. Diablo 4, Forza, Hi-Fi Rush, Spider-Man 2, Mortal Kombat 1, and Street Fighter. I don't know what they did to get nominated to this category, but they had to have done something good, right? Best adaptation. Castlevania Nocturne, really good series. Gran Turismo the film, I didn't watch it, I can't comment. The Last of Us, incredible series. The Super Mario Bros. Movie, people really loved it. Twisted Metal, surprisingly good. Free category. Most anticipated game. Final Fantasy VII Part 3, I guess. Hades 2, Like a Dragon, Star Wars Outlaws, Tekken 8. Brilliant, right? Games that are everybody can't wait to get their hands on. Esports and creators. Here is what I was talking about, right? XTQZZZ uh, requested the removal from esports coach because he hadn't been a coach that year, but they had put him in. Best esports game: CS2, Dota 2, League, PUBG, Valorant. Not really games that came out this year, but they are still relevant this year. Athletes and teams and coaches, I can't really comment on. Same thing with events or content creator of the year. That varies from person to person. But that was this year. It was a lot of the same handful of games. It really was. Okay, well, let's look at 2014. Game of the Year nominees for 2014: Dragon Age Inquisition, Bayonetta 2, Dark Souls 2, Hearthstone, Stone, and Shadow of Mordor. All great games, all fantastic games, all worthy of Game of the Year that year. Develop of the year: Nintendo, Blizzard, Monolith, Telltale, Ubisoft. Again, all great developers for that year. Now, not every developer for that year had games in Game of the Year, which seems a bit odd for Nintendo to win Developer of the Year and not win Game of the Year. But, we're seeing some differentiation already. Best indie game: Shovel Knight, Broken Age Act 1, Monument Valley, Transistor, The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. All great games, all new games, not repeated in either of the previous categories. Best mobile handheld game: Hearthstone, Bravely Default, Monument Valley, Super Smash Bros. For 3DS, and Threes. We only have two games repeated there. and that's an indie game, and Hearthstone, which is a Hearthstone. Best narrative: Valiant Hearts, South Park, The Walking Dead Season 2, Wolf Among Us, Wolfenstein: The New Order. All new games, games that weren't in other categories, and all games that deserved best narrative. I mean, maybe not South Park, but Walking Dead Season 2 was great. Wolf Among Us, phenomenal. Wolfenstein: The New Order, who doesn't love punching Nazis, right? All brilliant narratives. Best score soundtrack: Destiny 1, Alien Isolation, Child of Light, Sunset Overdrive, Transistor. All games with amazing soundtracks, and all new games to that category. Best performance: Trey Parker in South Park, Adam Harrington in The Wolf Among Us, Kevin Spacey, Melissa Hutchinson in The Walking Dead, and Troy Baker in Shadow of Mordor. Some of these are repeats, but there's also new ones in there. Mostly. Okay, so there are only repeats in there. Games for Change, Valiant Hearts, Mountain, Never Alone, The Last of Us Left Behind, and This War of Mine. Aside from Valiant Hearts, all new games to the category. And what we're seeing here is even through these different categories, even with some of the same nominees, it is not the same handful of games in each category. There are variations. Best Shooter, a category that doesn't exist anymore. Far Cry 4, Advanced Warfare, Destiny, Titanfall, Wolfenstein. All great games. Arguably, Titanfall was robbed there, but all brilliant games. Best action adventure games: Shadow of Mordor, Unity, Alien Isolation, Bayonetta 2, and Sunset Overdrive. We have seen those before, but they're not so consistently repeated. Best role playing game: Dragon Age Inquisition, which also won Game of the Year. Bravely Default, Dark Souls 2, Divinity Original Sin, and South Park. We're still getting new games in categories, even if we're seeing some repeats. Best Fighting Game: Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, Killer Instinct, Persona 4, Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS. I don't know why those were two separate games. And Ultra Street Fighter 6. All new games to that category. Family Game: Mario Kart 8, Disney Infinity, Fantasia, Skylanders, Tomodachi Life. I mean, those are all great family games. And Mario Kart 8 winning Best Family Game and Best Sports Racing Game does make some sense. But we even have new games in there. Best Online Experience: Destiny, Advanced Warfare, Dark Souls 2, Hearthstone, and Titanfall. Now, I don't agree with Dark Souls 2 being on there, but the rest of the games are multiplayer online games. Destiny is an MMO, technically. They all deserve to be on there, and even though we have seen those repeated, they're not repeated ad nauseum like they are in the 2023 Game Awards. And even here, we have a Best Remaster category, so we don't have to worry about having remasters will get their own category. They don't have to invade other categories. GTA 5, Halo, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, Last of Us, Tomb Raider, all remakes, all great games. Fan voted awards: Most Anticipated Game: Wild Hunt, Arkham Knight, Uncharted 4, Evolve, and Bloodborne. I mean, they're games to come out, of course, they're not going to be repeated in other categories. Esports player, esports team, trending gamer, and best fan creation. Those are ones that I'm not really going to talk about like I did with the 2023. Games with multiple nominations and awards. Multiple nominations. These 6 games have 3 nominations each throughout various categories. And these games have 2 nominations each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there are 20 games that have multiple nominations. Let's look here. Alan Wake and Baldur's Gate 3 have 8 nominations, right? They're repeated 8 times. Spider-Man, 7 times. Hi-Fi Rush, Mario Bros. Wonder, and Tears of the Kingdom, 5 times. Cyberpunk and Final Fantasy 16, 4 times. Resident Evil 4, Street Fighter 6, 3 times. And these games twice. 2 games are repeated for 8 nominations versus 6 games repeated for 3 nominations. That's why they feel samey. These games, right? These 6 games are nominated for everything. And that's a problem. Because the Game Awards should be a celebration of gaming as a whole in that year. It should be talking about as many games as possible and giving them the spotlight. Not the same 6 games nominated for 20 different categories. That is wild. That the same 6 games have been nominated a combined total of 20 times. Versus here, it took 20 games to be nominated, a combined total of 5 times, right? Or an overlapping total of 5 times. That's the I'm not trying to say, "Oh, well, back in my day, the Game Awards were good and they were so much better." But the facts show that the Game Awards in 2023 are only trying to push the same handful of games to you versus the Game Awards in 2014 when they started and were trying to celebrate as much about gaming as they could. And I think that's a problem that we're not celebrating as much gaming as we could in 2023, that there are games that were snubbed for various categories. Hogwarts isn't even nominated, and people lost their fucking minds for that game. We should be trying to celebrate as much as we can, not a handful. I'm gonna watch the Game Awards this year. I didn't vote because, frankly, there's not a lot of games that were nominated that I think deserve the categories that they were nominated for. I'm gonna watch them and I'm gonna see what wins. But in 5, 10 years, when I look back at this year and look back at the nominees, I'm not I'm probably not gonna look back and say, "Hey, look at all the great games that were released this year." I'm gonna look back and go, "Oh, that's all that was released in 2023?" Versus when I look at 2014 and I look at the nominees and the anticipated games and all of this, so many of these are great, brilliant games that I forgot about. I forgot about Transistor, but then looking back and seeing it on here makes me remember, makes me go, "Oh my god, what a great game." Our Game of the Year nominations were Dragon Age, Bayonetta, Dark Souls, Hearthstone, and Shadow of Mordor. What a great lineup of games for us to have promoted that year. Looking at Best Indie Game, Shovel Knight, Transistor, Vanishing of Ethan Carter, Broken Age, all still beautiful, great games, and there's so much differential, right? Best Narrative, Valiant Hearts, South Park, I forgot about that game. The Walking Dead Season 2, not mentioned up here, still a great game. Same thing with Wolfenstein and The Wolf Among Us. Seeing these back, or looking back 9 years and seeing these games makes me remember how much I love them and how great they were. Versus looking at this list where I'm going to go, oh, only 6 games came out that year. Nothing impactful, right? Nothing super long lasting came out that year. So why should I give a shit? Why should, if the Game Awards aren't going to celebrate gaming, then why should I care about them? If they're not going to take, we'll see next year if they take audience feedback. If next year we have a vast lineup of games, because there are a shitload of games that have come out that are not just AAA. BattleBit, Battle Block. It's a shooter that came out this year. It's like 64 v 64 Battlefield style with death chat, right? When you die, you can talk to the people around you regardless of what team they're on, and people love that game. That game has such a player base, or at least it did when it launched, and that is nowhere on this list. I'm hoping next year that the Game Awards are different. I hope they go back to the way they were in 2014 with a variety. And hopefully, with all the feedback and backlash that they've gotten this year, they will do that. We just have to wait and see and be patient and not judge them before next November. I just wanted to point out how the Game Awards have changed and the facts behind them changing. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know. Like the video, subscribe, comment, however you want to show your appreciation. Do you think that there are any games that were snubbed or that weren't snubbed or that people are saying are snubbed and you think, no, they deserve not to be nominated for something? What are your thoughts on the way the Game Awards have changed from where they started to where they are now? What is your game of the year? Uh, Answer any or all of these questions down below in the comment section. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.